Hello, and welcome to another episode of Foggy with a Chance of Seagulls. My name is Clark. As always, I'm joined by my good pal Evan, who is sporting an Eric Gagne style goatee. For those listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, you don't get the privilege of being able to see it, but yeah, I like the new look, my friend, and you got your hat a little raised, a la Trevor Plouffe style, so this is a whole new version of you. How you doing, my friend?
Hey man, I'm doing good. I think the Giants are gonna win
the whole episode.
Are gonna win the World Series. So hey, like that's sick. I mean, I'm doing great. I will not perpetuate this throughout the episode. But things have been happening in Giants land.
That is factual.
Very quickly. In full transparency, we recorded an episode on Thursday, and immediately after that, everything that we said
happened on
instantly
Friday.
Irrelevant.
I would say Friday was like the most newsworthy Giants baseball day we've had in years.
Yeah.
I didn't do any research. I'm just going to say that. Just shooting from the hip there, but yeah, a lot happened. So
do the stats.
Yeah.
Do the stats out next
Walk
time.
us through. So first thing, a big article dropped first thing Friday morning.
Well, that article was simply about Mr. 35 himself, Brandon Crawford, and his departure.
No, I was guessing who number 35 was. I was making a bad joke.
No, it's good. You're quick on the draw, and I wasn't there for you. But anyway, this article came out about Brandon Crawford, the title of which was Brandon Crawford on the end of his Giants tenure. I was not wanted back.
Oof, tearjerker.
That's an emotional headline, yeah. Mr. Baggerly. What are your takeaways from this article, this news kind of coming out?
Yeah,
because he went to go share his opinions publicly pretty quickly after this happened. So we're getting like a real time kind of look into his thought process here.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because he was emotional. I think that was like very clear. He signed with the Cardinals and immediately was like, I didn't want to leave the Giants. And I think he even said one person didn't want me back. And I don't think it was hard to read between the lines to know that he was talking about Farhan. So I think, you and I had some Crawford thoughts. I posted on my Substack a little kind of farewell to Crawford that posted Friday morning as well. I had not seen this article before I posted my little piece. I also don't think it would have affected it. I think both of us are coming from the perspective of fans who wanted to celebrate Crawford and also really saw the writing on the wall. But it's clear that Crawford didn't necessarily see the writing on the wall, or he felt like he could convince the front office to bring him back. He felt like he could play again. So where, after this article dropped, where do you fit into this? Or what are your thoughts or feelings at the end of the road, so to speak?
I think the reasons why he doesn't fit in the organization currently still hold true. However, I think that the Chapman signing, the other big, not to bury the lead here, but Matt Chapman signing to the Giants and how J.D. Davis kind of experienced all of that. And I would say that it's been a successful offseason. But within that, I think that there's something to look at for Farhan on a personal level and how we're kind of handling our personnel decisions. And I just feel like it's okay to say you just don't fit like what we're doing right now. Like that is like what you should say, and not say, hey, come in and compete for like a spot like on the like as a roster invite or something like that.
Well, I think what he said was we couldn't bring you in as just a roster invite. You mean too much to the organization to do that.
Oh.
To me, what I read from that article, and again, Baggerly on The Athletic, Crawford interview from Friday, I think a lot of what came out of that was Crawford pleading for a chance. It sounded like he and Farhan sat down one-on-one, which I think is like more than what would be expected from the head of the front office. The point that you made with JD Davis, where he found out about the Chapman signing as soon as he like left a movie on Friday night, like that also I think is tough from a player perspective. But I think the front office also, they have to thread this very particular needle, and I don't pretend to know how to do it any better. But you have to like respect and give space to the guys that you have to like, feel cared for and supported and communicated with. But you also can't talk about things before they're official because you don't want to, close a door before it's, before it's opened or anything. So I think, yeah, I think it's a really interesting conversation to have about like what's the proper form of communication. And we can talk, I think, more about that. I don't think either of us have the expertise in this field to be able to really speak to it perfectly, but yeah, these are real things. Two players back to back who have basically been like, yeah, the front office didn't talk to me before they made their decision.
I guess there's a couple like little lines from the article that stuck out to me. One was, I was told I could earn the last spot on the roster like anyone else could as a non-roster invitee. Crawford said that was the nail in the coffin. And so maybe it wasn't technically like that, but that was kind of the feeling of it, which kind of feels to me disingenuous. And then what Crawford said, which is not, I'm not saying I agree with this, it's just interesting to hear his perspective. He said, with the whole being over Luciano's shoulder thing, I feel like I could have made it very publicly apparent that wasn't the case. I don't even want to be playing every day because physically I'm not sure I could do that anymore with how much I've been hurt the last couple of years. To transition to a role player makes sense. So I feel like I could have navigated around that. And
I think it's fair for Farhan to say no. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. I think everything that Crawford's saying there is super accurate. I think it pulls on the heartstrings because literally all he wanted to do was just wear the uniform for another year. And it sounds like the farewell that you and I kind of alluded to, or that we've alluded to in the past, he didn't really feel like that was actually a farewell, that he was like, no, I'm still ready to play. I'm not retiring. I also think, him being over Luciano's shoulder isn't necessarily anything that he has control over. I think that's more of a media issue and an optics issue. And Farhan's already seen firsthand how the Giants media can create such a firestorm around him or around Kapler for that sake, So yeah, it's one of those that I agree and I feel for Brandon, but it's also just a nature of the business where we can't really wait around to see if you'll be productive because the last 2 years you really haven't.
Yeah, I guess it all makes sense to me. I wonder, is it worth it for Nick Ahmed? I know that you're, of course, a Nick Ahmed supporter, because who are like the leaders in this clubhouse right now? Like it's
Logan, Slater, Wilmer, Tyro.
Yeah. I think Webb's gonna step up, but I don't think that a lot of those guys are maybe leaders in the way that that I would say that he is. But at the same time, I mean, it's just interesting because like we see the fit with the Cardinals and we go, oh, it's a perfect fit for him because he can be there and then mentor a young shortstop, and then maybe he gets, into 80 games, 100 games, something like that, and it's a good situation. And there's also the issue of handedness with Nick Ahmed. I don't know. It's just interesting. I feel like,
well, if I can answer your question that you posed, I do actually think Nick Ahmed is a better fit for the team. And I think he's a better fit because you can have him, and it's starting to trend this way, and you're starting to hear people kind of talk about it more as like a likely possibility than even just like a possible outcome. But I'd say he's on track to be our starting shortstop this year. But I also feel like if Luciano starts tearing it up in AAA, the Giants will have no reservations about DFAing Ahmed and bringing up Luciano. But if Crawford were the shortstop and Luciano's killing it in AAA, the Giants aren't going to DFA Crawford. I think that's worse than what they've done to him.
Right.
And so you're setting up basically a block for the whole year rather than just to kind of fill the position for a month or two while you're shortstop of the future gets ready.
Yeah, that's true. I guess the question really critically rests on if Marco Luciano is a regular Major League Baseball player. And I think that it's entirely possible, and I'd love to believe it to be true. And then also you look at the numbers and they're not as encouraging as you'd want them to be from somebody like him. And I know that it's the evaluation is in the tools and whatnot. I know he put on weight this year, but if the glove doesn't play and then the bat also doesn't play, then it just raises interesting questions as to that decision. But I mean, this is like, I think my beef really is with Farhan, and just like, I feel like he just needs to shh and then do whatever he's going to do. Do you know what I mean?
I mean, isn't that
like,
what he did, though? He didn't talk about this situation. Like, about Crawford?
Luciano?
No, about...
Oh, Crawford. No,
I see what
he
you're
didn't.
saying. Okay,
like,
keep going.
Like,
yeah,
I feel like for Luciano, like, he's the starting shortstop, and then until he's not, we're not getting involved in anything else until we are. Like, I just feel like it's constantly this like misdirect kind of thing, which like is a fine tactic, but I feel like as a fan sometimes it feels.
What do you mean by
like,
misdirect? I don't get that, because Nick Ahmed fits with that. Like, Nick Ahmed is not a shortstop of the future for the Giants blocking Luciano. Like,
it seemed like to my perception that Luciano was the guy that was going to be given, you know, the largest path to the starting job. And then when we think about like the shortstop options that were on the free agent market, like Nick Ahmed wasn't even a name that we like thought about.
I mean,
you know
he
what I mean?
signed
Like,
a minor league deal
underneath like Tim Anderson even and guys like that. And so I guess I just like it should be performance that dictates like, you know, who goes on the field. But also, let's go back to the JD Davis thing for instance. Like, I think that he's not, you know, Ken Rosenthal wrote something, and I think tongue in cheek said maybe the JD Davis era in San Francisco is at an end. And I feel like obviously he's not like a franchise player. He's like a useful player that like many teams could use, probably the Mariners or whatever. And but then you look at it, and I just feel like obviously these things I guess happen quickly, but also like, hasn't this taken the whole offseason to get done? So then don't you feel like, so then I feel like something like Chap, like there's no, just be, I don't think that somebody's like status as a player is like what should like really determine whether they're part of the conversation. If publicly the front office, you know, it talks about this guy is, we're going into the season with this guy, like blah, 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 blah. Like, I just feel like on a basic human level, it's like, hey, we're like, how about like reaching out and saying, hey, we're pretty like far along in these negotiations with Chapman. I know you've been hearing the rumors. How do you feel about that? What is your preference? Like, do you have anything you want to communicate to us as we make this decision? Obviously, they're going to have the final say, but I think that like having player voices in the ring, I think is like why, like, I think Crawford maybe could have like retired last year, but just like had a sour experience of his last year in the majors because he's basically, you know, the plan B. And it's, I don't know.
Well, he was the plan A the last 2 years, and the team suffered for it. I mean, I don't want to be on the side of let's kick Crawford to the curb, although I do feel like in this debate I kind of am. But like, I think the interpersonal stuff is very important. I also feel like sometimes this stuff is just a business of who is producing. And I think the Luciano thing, to get back to kind of that part of the conversation, he's still set up to be our everyday shortstop of the future. If he doesn't start opening day, I don't think that makes everything that Farhan said at the beginning of the offseason incorrect. He said a lot of that stuff before Melvin was hired. And ultimately, it's Melvin's job to put the best 9 guys in the lineup every day. And if he doesn't think coming out of spring training that Luciano is one of those guys, then putting him in AAA and having a veteran that can field the position beautifully in Nick Ahmed and potentially hit a little bit to start the year, I think is a highly reasonable thing to pave the way for Luciano to just get those reps at shortstop. And then when he's, shown that he is dominating AAA pitching, which he's done at every step of the way, every stop in the minor league system, then we bring him up and we go, thanks, Nick Ahmed, forever Giant, appreciate your 60 days in the uniform or whatever it is. And if it's that many, then I think that's probably the high end of games he plays for us. But it feels like the whole point of not bringing Crawford back was to discard the placeholder shortstop for when Luciano's ready, whether that's in the middle of spring training, whether that's 30 games into the season, whether that's by the All-Star break, who knows? But I think you can't do that to Crawford. And I actually think Farhan is thinking about Crawford, the person, even though Crawford's saying, you don't tell me how I think I should go out. But ultimately, it is kind of Farhan's job. So I think no one's wrong in this. I think everyone is correct in feeling the way that they feel. And Farhan has a job to put out the best team that he can. And I watched Brandon Crawford the last 2 years, and it was painful at times. However, it was also really good in very short bursts. He had a couple 2-week periods of time last year where he was a really good hitter. But I don't think he can physically stand up to that. And Nick Ahmed is in a similar position in his career, but he's also 4 years younger than Brandon Crawford is. So the durability concerns, I think, aren't as bad. And we're going to discard Ahmed at some point. So I think thinking about durability isn't even part of the equation with him either. But
that's fair. I guess maybe I've unfairly linked like Craw to Clay a little bit in my mind of just like what he's going through in his like transition in his career. And I feel like from what Crawford says, I get this sense of like self-awareness of what he's able to contribute at this point. And I'm not necessarily convinced that like the guys that we have at the shortstop position this year are going to be the guys, but next year, maybe, yeah. End of the season is the hope. It kind of looks like to me at the moment. I think Tyler Fitzgerald has a lot going for him, but like, will the glove play there? I don't know for sure. Will the K rate be underneath 30? I don't know. I think Luciano kind of similar, like bat on ball questions, glove questions continue to persist, and
all those are very fair concerns. I would just much rather have Fitzgerald on the opening day roster backing up Luciano than I would Crawford. I think Fitzgerald brings so much more to the team in that bench utility role than Crawford would.
Yeah.
And then I would also want Luciano over Crawford to start and be the primary shortstop. And then I'd also rather, for the reasons I already mentioned, prefer Ahmed to Crawford. And so I think you're just going down the list of being like, is he a better fit with all of this in mind than any of the options that we have? And I don't think so. So I'm happy he got a major league deal with the Cardinals because I don't think there was one available with the Giants.
Well, here's another question. Like, how much of that fit is about like on-field value, like right now? Because as we've discussed, like, is this year our year? I don't know. Is it 2025? Maybe. But like, or do you think that evaluation has changed now that Chapman and then maybe one more free agent is coming?
I think this is a natural transition into the Chapman discussion. So I'll just kind of introduce it first that Matt Chapman Friday night officially signed a deal with us. It'd been rumored basically the entire offseason that this was happening. And I want to shout out as the Farhan apologists. Farhan. God. That, a deal that looked like it was going to be in the six figures. The Athletic reported, I can't remember the number of years, but like over $100 million that he was likely to get. We got him for a very confusing contract. Uh, but basically, they're announcing it as a 1-year deal, which I think is really interesting. 1 year, $16 million with a $2 million player option after the year if he declines his option. And then in the second year, it's $17 million. Third year, it's $16 million, both with player options. And then the fourth year is a mutual option for $20 million. Basically, if he's still kicking it with the Giants, we can decide in the fourth year whether or not he's still viable, still someone we would want in the organization. So we've signed him to be our third baseman. I think with him, Soler, Jung-Hoo Lee, we have upgraded 3 parts of our offense or just position player side in a way that like Farhan has expressed for the last 3 years wanting to upgrade athleticism and power and find guys who are more regular players, not just leaning on platoons all the time. And I think they all fit really well. So we have talked, I think the idea with the rotation, with Luciano, even with Jung-Hoo Lee, is 2025 we have a better shot at competing, but I think the Chapman move really signals that they want to make the playoffs this year. And we saw with Arizona last year, just making the dance is a huge part of it. So
yeah, I mean, what do we like? You mentioned it's a weird contract. I certainly agree. I think the way that it's been PR spun is interesting too. This idea of it being 1-year contract. I'm not familiar with that being language used to describe this kind of deal.
And
with
we're
Bellinger's
very familiar
deal
with the opt-out game in San Francisco.
Exactly.
So.
Exactly. I mean, you look at it and we've had guys that have opted in very much so. And then that becomes what it is if they underperform. Chapman has had multiple big extensions on the table from the A's and the Blue Jays in his career. And Chris Rose said this on his podcast today, but he must be kicking himself a little bit, being what did I do to deserve a contract like this?
Or kicking Boris. I mean, Boris completely misread the market this year. Frankly speaking.
Totally. I mean, I agree. And I think if you're weighted out by Farhan, that means that you're not the best tactician that you think that you are. But, he has a lot of qualities, but we've had a lot of second and third place finishes, and that can't be denied. But anyway, I think that it's on the Giants side. We've discussed that we were kind of out on Chapman at a certain point. It just didn't make sense to bring him in. But for this contract, for basically the price of one Michael Conforto, you get Matt Chapman. I feel like I'll take that.
I think I
put those guys
context.
in the same boat of usefulness. It's that's
I find Chapman to be way more advantageous.
Chapman is way more useful.
Team.
But I think they both have a low floor as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think that they both are high ceiling, low floor type guys, which is kind of, it seems like the MO now with this front office.
The difference there though is Chapman's defense is going to make him a valuable player even if he forgets how to hit. And Conforto, while he's a decent outfielder, is never going to give you that. Chapman's comp is more Yastrzemski than Conforto. Obviously, we're talking about the contract more and then kind of piecing together, but...
Yeah, that's true. Defense doesn't always last you forever, is kind of my feeling. And he's 32, right now? And I think that
I don't think he's that old. I think he's 30 on the dot.
Really?
But...
Well, let's settle this right now. He is 30 on the dot. Okay, that's not that old, but still. I guess maybe I'm projecting because we're both turning 30 this year.
Hey,
so I'm
I think he's a
us
93
versus Matt
baby,
Chapman.
See, I'm telling you, Evan, I'm in the prime of my career.
We both keep insisting to everybody in our lives.
Yeah, no, 30-year-olds are young, bro. 30-year-olds are young.
But I feel like ultimately he's providing value, and I think it's a great get for the Giants, to be honest. And I think this is one of the few opt out structures that truly benefits the Giants in the sense of like if we take this, let's call it 3-year contract with that option for the fourth, and he stays for the duration of that, and if the glove stays pretty consistent, then I think that's worth it, honestly, for the type of like staff that we want to have, and really making good on all these promises about getting younger on defense, more athleticism.
We have so many ground ball pitchers too. I think it's just such a big deal to have him, and this is also why I really like the idea of Nick Ahmed potentially, even as a stopgap. But like Webb, Jordan Hicks is starting to throw a splitter and two-seam a lot more as a starter. Cobb is a ground ball pitcher. Keaton Wynn had a really high ground ball rate last year. So we've got a lot of guys who are reliant on the infield getting outs for them. And if we have Chapman, a decent shortstop, Tyro was one of the best defensive second basemen last year. And then Wilmer and Lamont are super solid at first. I don't worry about either of them. It's like, that's just a really good defensive infield. Jung-Hoo Lee seems to be a pretty good defensive outfielder. Yaz, I've already expressed my love for him in right field. And like we talked about, Conforto's a good outfielder. And Bailey was a Gold Glover in his rookie year. So the defense could be really fucking good. The pitching staff, we've talked ad nauseum about some of the like mixed signals, and I think we'll get to that a little bit more as the show goes on. But pitching staff, will be what it is. I think the bullpen in particular will be really good. Also, Tyler Rogers is very dependent on a good infield defense around him. So I think Chapman fits a hole that JD Davis was above average at third base. So it wasn't, I don't think, this like gaping hole that we had, but it is an improvement from the incumbent, which will help this year.
Webb said when we got him, he's like, I'm just going in on righties all day. I love that quote. And you got to love that. I mean, and that's not a knock on Davis, as much as I was trying to come to his defense earlier. And like, let's be clear about something, okay? I think that like everything that you're saying is like with the head is correct. I think I'm coming from the place of heart, which doesn't always like come through in baseball decision making these days. I think it's much like less a part of things, but it makes sense. And I think Chapman too, like his bat has a chance of still, I think I saw Sarah say like that he'd expect him to, kind of regress or something to like something in between his things, and maybe even like 108 120 like WRC OPS, whatever, who cares, like that type of stuff, if it's around there, like that's pretty good. I think that it's like a decent deal. And what I think one of the issues that we had raised, I think in your Substack article you mentioned this too, is you sign him for 6-7 years, then you're really wondering about getting to year 30, Crawford's age right now, and then you're like, then you have to make these decisions that you don't want to make. But this is shorter.
It could be a 1-year deal.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think I'd have to call it a rare Farhan W in the parlance of Giants Twitter. But no, I think that it really like,
where's my Farhan
it says something
we trust sweatshirt when I need it.
But I think it says something. It's exactly what I've been like trying to bang the drum of, like, do something so the fans feel like we're doing something this year, and it's like that we're making an effort. And I think this is a great way of making an effort this year without leveraging the or giving away the future at the same time.
So turning the question back to you, now that Matt Chapman is signed, are we signing Snell? Do we have to sign Snell? What do we do at the fifth spot in the rotation? Because, and I don't know, I think this happened in the middle of last week, but Tristan Beck had an aneurysm in his right arm. He had surgery last Thursday. He was put on the 60-day IL to make room for the Chapman signing, so he's out for the first 2 months automatically. When he comes back, he'll be a bullpen guy. I think he lost his chance to start, which I'm really sad about for him. But yeah, what are we doing with the rotation? How are we filling his spot, you think?
Well, I think it's a great question. And we will talk more about Blake Snell right after this quick break. And we're back. I have a new comp for my facial hair, which is Alex Dickerson. And I think that's better. Remember
Forever
that guy?
Giant. Thank you for spinning it positive. I was talking shit by comparing you to Gagne, but
I'm like that Michael Scott wannabe Alex Dickerson. The brief few months where we were chanting Dick at the ballpark were just a beautiful time in Giants history. So just want to shout him out.
Fantastic.
But to turn to the Snell question, if this is just Boris saying, this is what I'm doing for my clients this year, mea culpa, I'll go get him next offseason, then go grab one right now. Either
and
one,
again,
I don't
mutually
care.
beneficial, just like the Chapman thing, and for different reasons, because it's the ballpark in the favor. But like, where would Snell have a better chance to continue his image as a dominant pitcher in this league? And again, we talked about the defense is good, so
Yeah, I feel like it's with the Chapman signing. I think now people, national baseball fans are starting to look maybe just a little bit at the Giants and saying, oh, maybe I kind of see what they're doing here. And I think that like Chapman plus Snell, maybe just one of those guys alone doesn't give you a real high impact or whatever, but together, I think that's they're filling big holes, and I think the rotation is not a hole. As we've discussed, there's many young pitchers lying in wait that I think would have that I think would be better than like a Zach Greinke or like a Ryu signed abroad or something like that. Do you know what I mean?
Or even
like,
a Ross
they're definitely
Stripling
better
who we
than
had
that.
in house already. I think we talked about this last week, so I'll just regurgitate this point. But I'm curious to see what we do with the rotation. Boom. I'm curious to see what we do with the rotation, because if we sign Snell, then this was all smoke screen just to get the price down, which worked with Chapman, and I'm totally fine with it. But if we don't sign Snell or Montgomery, then the posturing and the commitment to the young guys is actually just legit the truth. Because if the organization was worried about what the pitching would look like, we wouldn't have traded Ross Stripling and what was essentially just a salary dump to the A's, which is actually just a hilarious thing that I don't think we've talked about enough, that the A's took on salary that we dumped. That just goes completely in the face of everything that these two organizations represent.
Fisher's spending big. He's spending big.
On a death ball. He
got his guy. Fisher got his guy.
We're staying.
Ross Stripling as the hero of Oakland. I love that narrative. I'll get down with it. Yeah. I'm sad to not see the death ball.
I know.
I'm going to go need to see it in person.
That we didn't get to see the death ball. But I do think we saw Mason Black over the weekend. He started against the Padres minor league squad. But through 3 innings, he looks to be, built up to be able to throw 5 or 6 innings potentially. Whether or not he has the quality to do so, he's never pitched in the big leagues. But I think Mason Black is a guy that the organization is actually feeling very comfortable with if he has to be our 5th starter going into this year. If they don't sign anyone. I say all this without any knowledge, but just reading the tea leaves. And if they are very confident in these young guys, then Mason Black pitching for a month is not the worst thing in the world, I don't think.
I think it's much more a situation of just realizing an opportunity that they're partially responsible for creating, and just capitalizing on something like that. Because I think you look at Snell's market right now, and it's the Yankees reported to be in contact, but they're not going to sign him. They will the luxury tax implications are through the roof.
So many long-term years in the pitching staff already with Cole, Rodon, and Stroman, who they signed this year. So I don't see it for them.
Yeah. And I'll be the first to hate on the Yankees, but I think the rotation is set up to look pretty good this year already. I don't think that they need him. I know the Phillies have like mentioned that like if an opportunity falls in their lap that they might take it, but they just extended Zach Wheeler, which I want to talk about too. And then you look at the Angels as the other possible option, and it's like I know Mike Trout thinks that he's going to be able to win in Anaheim, but that is not happening, buddy. Sorry, reality check. You are the GOAT, but the farm system is trashed. Shohei's gone. The magic is gone.
Well,
whatever.
You've got Anthony Rendon, who is committed to 30 games a year. So
I think, yeah, you get 30 games of Rendon, you get Trout, and you get Nolan Shanuel, and then, hey, maybe a World Series is coming your way. But I just feel like, look at those options, and like, if Snell strikes me as somebody who wants to be on a team that's competing for the playoffs, so why not the Giants? And so I say, go ahead and do it. I did mention Zach Wheeler. He just signed a 3-year, $126 million extension with the Phillies, and is staying there through his late 30s. What do we think of this deal? And do you remember this man fondly?
Great Giant, Zach Wheeler. His career is very interesting. I mean, he was the last of the run of great first-round picks that we had. We were talking about it, I think in our last episode, of just how bereft of first-round talent we are over the last decade. Literally the worst in all of baseball. But what that followed was probably the best run that almost any franchise has ever seen, with Kane, Lincecum, Posey, Bumgarner, and then Wheeler the year after Bumgarner.
Yep.
Now, we didn't get to enjoy any of the fruits of Wheeler's labor, but also when he's been good, we haven't been good. So he doesn't really feel like one who got away. The Mets should feel worse than we do, I think, would be my hot take. Not even hot, I guess, based on your reaction. But I'm all for guys staying where they're at. Unless your name is Brandon Crawford, obviously, as I showed earlier. My cold heart.
Yeah, get out of town, fucking old man. We don't want you no more.
People, please read my ode to Crawford that I wrote to see my real feelings. I love the man. He represents so much of what it means to be a fan. I love him dearly. Please don't
I just want to say
hate me.
about Crawford really quickly. Did you see that Instagram story that he posted where it was him on a Florida beach with the song caption, "You Broke My Heart" by Drake?
Oh my God.
You're in your feelings when you're posting that Drake to the story.
He was in his sad boy era. He also, right before it, posted a thing that was like, thank you to the organization, or thank you to the front office that drafted me, not thank you to the Giants front office. It was like, he's all in his feels. And like, you know,
see, that's
that's
why I feel like the Clay comp is so like relevant. Like, obviously Belt was the captain, who, by the way, somebody signed Brandon Belt. I want to watch that man hit more home runs. What's wrong with you?
100%.
But
hold up.
Funny.
Let's sign him to be our fifth starter.
I think Panda has the inside track.
Oh, true.
And by the way, he's totally hosed now, unfortunately.
He was always hosed. There was no shot at playing time for him.
No. I ordered the jersey. I'm back. The Panda hats. I'm in contact with Alibaba. We're shipping a lot of them over. We're ready to go. But please, go ahead.
Speaking of jersey, I just want to do a quick plug because I started working on this morning. I don't know when I'm going to post this, but a fun little piece I'm writing is like, now that the Giants actually have people to be excited for, who are the best jerseys to purchase this year? Or like, if you are to purchase a jersey, finally you've been waiting, which actually applies to your boy here who wore the same stained Will Clark jersey for like a decade before I had to retire it last year because my girlfriend said she wouldn't sit with me anymore.
Classic straight man behavior.
Guilty as charged. But yeah, you have a pretty sweet jersey coming in the mail, or that has shit. I don't know the
Okay, I'll let everybody in on this.
Please do.
So I saw on some Athletic article, somebody commented something about having gotten like a custom Jung-Hoo Lee jersey with the letter in Korean, which that's what I immediately wanted. That's what I just immediately wanted upon like us signing him.
Yeah.
And let's just say I found a connection and I'm sending him a jersey and he's gonna do it for me and send it back. And none of you bitches will have it. It'll just be me. So this is some exclusive stuff. And hey, maybe we'll see how it goes. I'm excited. I've never
not to give away
done anything like this.
Not to give away my article, but that is going to be the number one ranked jersey possibility. So sick to have Jung-Hoo Lee in Korean on the back of a cream Giants jersey, or French vanilla if you're Jeff Kent.
I took a stand, okay? I took a stand and I didn't go for the majestic cool base technology. I'm standing against breathability. Amen. And I'm going for those old polyester jerseys that honestly make you way too hot inside, kind of itchy.
That's the love. That's part of it.
But that's part of it, okay? Call me a boomer if you want, but I'm excited. I feel like I was actually thinking about jerseys today, and like there's some good options if you go to the Dugout store this year.
There's some really good options. I think, keep going. Sorry.
No, I was going to say some that come to mind was, obviously Webb was the guy last year, and he's been our ace, but now it's like a little bit more he's captain of the ship right now, speaking of captains. And I like that one. In some ways
with Logan, like last year confirmed him getting second in Cy Young, leading the league in innings. It confirmed that he's an ace. I remember last year there was a lot of conversation of like, well, Webb's like a 1B at best. And like last year he was like, no, I'm 1A of the whole league. Best respect. And I've seen him consistently now top 10 starters for this year. And like he's a legit dude. And he's also like very clearly a leader. He was on the Rose rotation talking about he was part of different free agent meetings and like talking to different guys, specifically talked about his conversation with Jordan Hicks before he signed, of just like kind of selling the organization and the culture. And like, he's such a great representative. I think I think Logan is like right up there with Jung-Hoo Lee. But I think Jung-Hoo Lee just possesses some like flash to his game that's going to be so fun. And the 51, the like homage to Ichiro too, and like has kind of a similar game style. Like, but those two,
yeah. I love the J.H. Lee too.
Yeah.
I would pick up a Solaire. I'd pick up, what's interesting? If we picked up Snell, I feel like nobody would buy a Snell shirt.
I agree.
But
I thought you were going to go in the opposite direction. I was going to be like, and then you said exactly what I was thinking.
But I think Chapman shirts will sell. And honestly, I'd love to see it work out beyond this year. As I think about it more, what I loved seeing is, I talked a lot of shit, I'll be honest, about the idea of like Bomel being a recruiter and that actually mattering in this free agent process. And then, you see what they're saying and they feel like they have some unfinished business. And it's like, love to see that. And I think that like all reports say that he's like a high character guy, just like a real professional. And like, it seems like somebody you want in the clubhouse. I will say about Blake Snell, kind of a weird dude. Little bit of a weird vibe. You can just see it in his face and the way he like does his goatee.
Face watch. Yeah, speaking of goatees, all right, mister.
But his face is more fucked up looking than mine, so it's okay. I can get away with it. Well, I also we're reaching our last few innings today, but I did want to talk spring training a bit too. That's still going on.
Yeah.
And ostensibly, we care about it. I think you've been a little bit more plugged in than I have. Do you have any reports you'd love to share?
Man, it's so frustrating how hard it is to watch any, like, I basically, like, games are on, and I'm going, okay, I'm just going to be scrolling Twitter as much as I can to see if anyone from the games or any beat writers or anyone is just posting clips. There was this Korean media outlet that posted a really cool, like, right behind the home plate view of Jung-Hoo Lee's home run from a couple days ago or a few days ago now. But yeah, spring training notes, he's been on fire and like looks the part. And I mean, obviously spring training isn't the regular season. You're facing different quality of pitchers and stuff, but like he is performing exactly how you would hope he would initially. So that's exciting. Luis Matos is giving Ronald Acuna vibes. Not the first time I'm going to say it, not the last time I'm going to say it.
Acuna.
I know. God, I'm going to say it better next time. Jesus, I was hoping you
This guy did the Peace Corps in the DR, okay? I don't even speak Spanish.
turning into a Trump Republican by the way.
Acuna. Who's out for a little bit, it looks like.
Ronald. Oh, Ronald, not Luis. I was like, Matos is hurt. But yeah, Matos has 3 home runs. He basically went, hey, the only knock on me was that I didn't have enough power. Boom, mírame. And there's a cool write-up that Bags did this weekend talking about how the team that he's like committed to or like on in the Venezuelan Winter League, they ended up winning the Caribbean Series this year, and they wanted him to play for them. And he bypassed that, even though his folks never got to see him play in the majors last year because of visa purposes, because of Venezuelan politics and stuff. They even tried to go to like Brazil, and then like through the U.S. embassy in Brazil, come back, and they still couldn't get a visa. Really messed up process, but I could totally imagine him wanting to play in front of his folks. But he bypassed that, just trained all off season. He got to Arizona in like January just to like lift and be around the coaches and stuff. And like that work is paying off for him. He looks amazing and is kind of making me go, why do we even have Conforto?
Yeah, I agree. I definitely agree. I want to see him in left field big time. And I think that he will find his way one way or another.
Question for you.
Conforto's creaky.
Does he break the Bond streak?
I hope so. Honestly, if we keep Conforto, then a lot is riding on what goes on with him. Like, I think that kind of like, it's kind of out of his control a little bit, but like if Conforto's in the lineup, then, you know, you kind of just wait and see. And I think, or, you know, between him and Slater and Yaz and all these creaky ass dudes, like, I think that there'll be a spot. And I think he feels ready. It's like Juan Soto caught up to him in homers like the other day. Do you know what I mean? Like that says something where I think there's a lot I saw some comment on some thing about this new Giants fan from like New Zealand or something, and they're like, wait, we are losing every spring training game. Should I be alarmed? Are the alarm bells ringing? And it's like, no.
In a word,
no. In a word, no. But I think what is great about spring training is you can kind of just take the positives and ignore the negatives and just rationalize it that way. And I think that that's a real bright spot alongside, I know we've been talking about him already, but I just get more and more hyped for Lee every single day. Yeah. I can't wait to watch him just play and communicate with the team and give press conferences. Like, I truly, it's going to be good.
He does one of my favorite things aesthetically in all of baseball, which is the hat/helmet flying off your head because you're running so fast look. And so much of it is like so contrived, or like it's basically, I mean, fake. Like you could be running the same speed and have a helmet that fit your head better. But like it just evokes so much, like, I don't know, pizzazz, for lack of a better term, which we've just lacked so much of. Last year, Tyro stole some number of bases over 20. I can't remember, 20-some bases last year. And then next highest were 2 people tied for, I think, 4 stolen bases, was second place on the Giants. Can you tell me one of those 2 people? Because both answers will surprise you.
Slater?
Not Slater, which he would normally, but he was hurt so much of last year.
Having a clue.
Is our right now 4th string catcher and our starting left fielder. It was Blake Sable and Michael Conforto that tied for second place on the Giants last year in steals. And like Lee has never stolen more than 13 bases in the KBO. There's a little talk that he'll try to steal more in the MLB, but he's going to steal more than 4 bases this year. He's just too damn fast to not. And like,
he's going to steal more than 30.
Whoa.
I feel pretty confident in saying
he's
that.
going to
think
double his previous output in the KBO. I love that take.
I just feel like the Giants were like dead last in steals, as you're saying, and that hurts you in the game because now the success rates are high enough with the bigger base and just knowing the stats of it that like when you pick your spots, it's totally worth it, and it's worth the risk. And he just like, look, he models his game after Ichiro, like. That was a big part of Ichiro's bag, and I think that he's totally got it. Not on the same level, obviously, but he's simply the grandson of the wind.
Oh.
but the wind still flows through his veins. Do you know what I mean?
Facts.
And I want to say too about the his helmet situation. I feel like it's kind of like, I don't know if anybody listening has ever watched Drag Race, but it's kind of like in that show or in drag performances where they come out and they have the one outfit and then it's kind of like, oh my God, another dress inside.
Wait,
like I feel like
more.
it's kind of like, I feel like that's the extent of what you can do with a baseball uniform.
I love it.
I mean, you can put chains and whatever, but it's just a little flair for the dramatic. I mean, I think you can like link it to that photo shoot he did for whatever that brand was, Louis Vuitton or some shit. But it's like, that swag is like something that we need. I feel like swag levels are increasing.
So much
X
better.
swag.
X
Like
swag,
it's
X
going
vibes,
up.
X whatever.
Soler and Lee like alone, but I think like Matos got the swag. I feel like.
Did you see his his turn after the one homer he hit? Like,
oh yeah. Sexual. But I think Luciano's got the swag too. I think if he can combine the talent with the swag, that's going to be really fun to see. I think Tyro's coming into his own.
We've talked about this, I think, already when we broke down the Soler signing, but like, I'm so excited for the impact Soler will have on Luciano. I think Luciano can be a very similar hitter to Jorge Soler. That like patient, but when they hit the ball, it goes a long way. And I just love that. Yeah. Soler, Chapman. Also, real quick, Chapman's got pretty decent speed for, old guy third baseman.
I think Chapman's got a pretty decent mustache. I'll say that much.
Kind of dirty. Not even May yet.
But
he's ahead of schedule.
What's been awesome is like everybody looks good in the uniform this year. And I know that we have great uniforms with the Giants, but look, like it weirds me out seeing Chris Paul be a Warrior still. I see that white uniform on him and I'm like, this does not fit. It's like not right, even though he's been good for the Warriors, but like it doesn't always work for some reason or another, but everybody feels like a good fit. I have a little bit of some Hicks concern, but we'll see how that plays out when he gets truly is going 5.
I'm committed to the
6.
Giants pitching lab. I'm gonna reserve judgment until we see it, but as far as like getting ready for the start of the season, I'm just excited to watch it and then make judgments after. But
yeah,
I think
and you know what,
legit. But yeah,
I want to say too quickly just about Chapman as well that it's. This idea of him, I think, has been talked about of the value that he provides by being able to like protect Luciano whenever he might come up this year. And now that's got me excited. So I know I came in with the negative energy up top, but that's only just because of sadness and whatever. But
I think your concerns are legit too. And I think the comparison that you've made in the past to Luciano and the like effect Chapman could have is really poignant too. From a couple weeks ago, your Semien comparison that I completely whiffed on. I listened back on our podcast and you were like, reminds me of another shortstop who was pegged as a weak fielding candidate. And I was like, oh, Brandon Crawford? And you were like, no, the opposite.
I didn't tee you up as well as possible. No. It's all good.
But I just enjoyed that. Like you thought we were on the same page and I just completely whiffed.
Yeah, but no, I feel like defense is that's something that's becoming an identity of this team. I think Matt Williams has talked plainly that like championship teams can play defense, and
it should be really love it. Like, this is what our identity should be.
Yeah, totally agreed. And like defense, Well, I was going to say defense doesn't slump, but I've seen some people slump on defense on the Giants.
Previous iterations of the Giants have slumped, but when you're actually good at defense, it doesn't slump. Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know if I believe.
That's exciting to watch, because then it's going to be less of a damn clown show this year, at least, at minimum. Even if we get embarrassed at the plate, at least we can like pick it. And I don't think that we will get embarrassed at the plate. And I say World Series or bust.
Boom. Heard it here first, Joe.
There we go.
I want to say one more thing before we
Yes.
wrap up here. We've been kind of hinting at this, and I just wanted to make this kind of point. JD Davis, I think, is getting traded. I don't see a scenario where he's on this team on the opening day roster. He himself, before Chapman signed, he had an interview with the Chronicle where he kind of said, like, oh yeah, if Chapman comes, he can play shortstop. And the Giants did everything but say, no, JD Davis doesn't know what he's talking about when they did the press release about the Chapman signing. So Chapman and then Joey Bart is out of options. Both need a new home. And I'm curious to see if we can package the two of them and get, like, I don't know, maybe a starting pitching prospect or just something for each of them. So I just wanted to mention that as something that might, be coming around at some point this spring. I think we're going to hold on to Joey Bart to make sure Bailey and Murphy get to opening day unscathed. Because catchers, I mean, we saw it last year. Our whole catching core disintegrated by like the second week of the season. And then our AA catcher, Patrick Bailey, had to come save the day, which he did. But yeah, interested to see if a trade of those two guys ends up happening. You mentioned, I think, the Mets earlier, or Mariners. That I knew it was an M. Of course, our friendly Mariners. How could I forget? I could see them wanting a third baseman, but they don't need a catcher. So,
yeah, I think it may have to go separately, but I think we can find some homes for them. I remember your friend Ben saying that Chapman was just dying to be a Mariner, and it was not to be so. But we'll give you JD Davis though, and
we'll give you Chapman light.
And I was going to say, as we wrap up here, that it's, I was going to plug our voicemail and once again chastise all our hundreds and thousands of listeners for not calling in. And, but we actually did receive a message, which is this. There's no name here, so unfortunately I can't credit you, but I'm going to travel to SF. Do you have any recommendations for quality restaurants? They said SF, not me.
Is this Tim Kawakami calling into the line? For those who don't know the reference, at the end of every podcast he does, he asks his guests what restaurant they've enjoyed recently, which gives a lot of tips to restaurants that are way out of my price range in the city. So thank you, Tim. There was a fun anecdote, though, when Farhan was on the podcast a few weeks ago, where he was like, there's a really great Japanese restaurant next to the ballpark that I've learned about through different people who we may have pursued in free agency and like didn't say it was Ohtani or Yamamoto, but it was clear that one of the two guys, like in particular, and I would imagine Ohtani because he's been in the big leagues, loves this one Japanese restaurant near the ballpark. So I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head. Anyway, to get to the heart of the question, I could spend an entire podcast episode talking about the great food in San Francisco, which I will try not to do, because we're already late into this recording. And it obviously depends what part of the city you're in. I live in the Richmond in SF, and I think just the diversity of food that you can get out here and bang for your buck is bar none in the city. You can get dim sum, Vietnamese, Thai food, and actually shout out Mandalay, which is a Burmese restaurant out here that just got a James Beard Award.
Snap.
Yeah, in their
good for them.
That just released last week, and they were the only SF restaurant out of their award winners. But Mandalay, fantastic Burmese restaurant. Burma Superstar, also fantastic. I think gets a lot of the love here because Burma love. That was an inside joke there. But Mandalay is also fantastic, so check that out. I went to a place called Aziza, which is a Moroccan place for my friend Lydia's 30th birthday. Shout out Lydia. Also fantastic. Those are just a few off the top of my head.
Yeah, I was just gonna share a couple too. I think there's this place called Bet Rima, which is like they call it Arabic comfort food, and there's one in like kind of Cole Valley, and that's just excellent food. And I would say too, if you come to San Francisco, I'd say go check out the Oakland culinary scene too, because there's great restaurants over there in Oakland. And for me, one of my favorites is called Tacos Oscar. And there's a lot of vegetarian options, but there's meat options. There's something for everybody. Just high quality food made super well. But we could both talk about this, as you said, I'm sure, for a full episode.
Is this
but
thank you the chance of meatballs?
We finally made it there. And so thank you to whoever asked this question. If you are hearing this now and you have questions you want to ask us, it can be about the Giants. It can be about my beautiful facial hair. It can be about whatever you want it to be. But regardless, thank you for listening. If you made it to the end, your name is probably Pat Ma because you're my mother. But if you're not, I thank you deeply from the bottom of my heart. And we will see you next week for another episode of Foggy with a Chance of Seagulls.